In the recent years, the accounting landscape has undergone a significant transformation to strengthen the financial reporting in the changing business paradigm. To detect and prevent fraud effectively, professionals, especially chartered accountants, require a deep understanding of the rapidly evolving field of forensic accounting along with its techniques and standards. In India, Forensic Accounting and Investigation Standards, that is FAIS, plays a very vital role in guiding practitioners through the complexities of the financial system and environment. Ladies and gentlemen, with these words, DAAB, that is Digital Accounting and Assurance Board of ICAI, is going to conduct the webinar on forensic accounting and investigation standards. I, CA Tanushri Lekha, on behalf of committee, would like to express my views on this. We have the presence of speakers, the eminent speakers for today's webinar, that is CA Priyanka Thakur ma'am and CA Uday Kulkarni sir, who will be taking the second session of the webinar. To begin with, we would like to give the welcome note to the in presence of CA CS Nanda sir, who is the chairman of DAAB, and CA Dayanivas Sharma sir, who is the vice chairman of DAAB, that is Digital Accounting and Assurance Board. With these words, we would like to welcome Madam CA Priyanka Thakur. Before taking about her, we would like to present the words about Madam. CA Priyanka Thakur Madam is not only the chartered accountant, but also she has qualified company secretary and holds the certification of certified fraud examiner. With the enriching professional journey of more than 5 successful years full of accomplishments and diverse range of works that she has undertaken, she is currently associated with one of the big four leading the force in forensic and deputy service line. With these words, I would like to welcome Madam for the webinar, ma'am. CA Priyanka Thakur ma'am will be joining us in few moments. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our privilege to have her presence at a very short notice. We will definitely get enriched with the professional knowledge that she will be sharing with us. Priyanka ma'am, we are good to go.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it audible now?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible to us.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanushri, for the brief introduction and giving me the opportunity to speak on this topic. As all of you know, like this session was supposed to be taken care by Himanshu, but due to uncircumstantial things, he is not able to take this session. So I would take it up. Hope you'll get better out of it. Thank you.
Definitely.
So can we start?
Definitely, ma'am.
Yeah. Let me share the screen first. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Your slides are visible to us.
Yeah. So thank you, Tanushri, again for setting up the context why we are taking up this session. This is, related to forensic accounting and investigation standards published by ICAI. And I feel very proud saying that ICAI is the first accounting body in the world who has launched these standards and that were applicable from 1st of July 2023 last year. And before setting going forward, so I would like to highlight why was the need for these standards basically. So if it's, as you all know, like there are standards on auditing, there are standards on internal audits also, but there was no guidance available for the professionals that are into forensics practice. And there was multiple approaches that were being handled by the different professionals. Like I am being a professional working on one of the engagements, and my colleague, they have a different mindset. They'll find, they'll follow different approach these standards. So there was no consistency in the framework, no guidance available for our professional. But after this, that is a very welcome step by the ICI that launching these standards. So I'll thank ICI as well for this initiative. Going forward, this is the overview of FAS, first slide, objective overview, preface, framework, basic principle, and summary of each standard that we'll see in the coming session. Yeah, the overall objective, like I have mentioned, what was the need for this forensics standards? So the need is basically codify best practices for all of us, like that we can have follow, clarify expectation and attribute. That is like the expectation that is from professional that is going to conduct the forensic assignments. Set common terminology definition, what is forensic accounting, what is investigation, and so on. Set basic quality benchmark of services, harmonize and improve performance, provide knowledge and guidance to all the professionals, set and evaluate level of performance, how the professional is performing in its particular area, protect the ICI brand up, and of course the last one. So basically these set of expectation and the objectives are the purpose of these guidance standards. Yeah, and this is the overview of FAI standards. If we'll see, these are the overarching documents, preface, framework, basic principle, and the series of standards, that is 100 series, 200 series, 300, 400, 500, and the 600. So yeah, the 100 series and 200 series will be taken up by me in this session, and the 300, 400, 500, 600 session will be 600 standards will be taken up in the second part of this session. So 100 series that talks about, 110 that talks about identifying the nature of engagement. That is prior to acceptance of engagement, you should identify what the engagement is and what is expected out of it. 120 talks about identifying fraud risk. 130 talks about the laws and regulations that are applicable to the respective assignments. 140 talks about applying hypotheses for evidence collection. 210 talks about engagement objectives, that is for conducting due diligence prior to acceptance of the engagement. Sorry. 220 talks about engagement acceptance and appointment. 230 talks about using the work of an expert whenever there is a requirement, and 240 talks about engaging with external agencies and law enforcement agencies. 240 talks about communication with the stakeholders, and the effective communication should be there. Also, as I already mentioned, 300, 400, 500, and 600 will be taken care in the second part of this session. So going to the next slide. Yeah, so we are talking about this overarching document, that is preface, framework, and basic principles. If we'll see the to whom these standards are applicable. So basically, this has been published by ICI, so you can understand these are applicable on the all ICI members. But as of now, forensic engagements are being conducted by MBAs, lawyers, and everyone, and every professional basically. But this standards are applicable specifically to the ICI members only as of now. And if there is a regulatory requirement, that may be applicable on the other professionals as well. These are the principle based standards, and this talks about what is expected of the professional. So there is another guidance implementation guide that is published by the ICI, and that talks about how this is expected from the professional. But this implementation guide is completely recommendatory in nature, and that is not mandatory. And these are applicable on all FAI engagement, that is forensic accounting and investigation engagements. Right. So if there is any limitation in the standard, that you can refer to respective standards, and that is clearly mentioned in the respective standards, like whether this standard is applicable or not. So I think we are clear on this particular slide. The next standard setting methodology. Yeah. So these standards are basically drafted by DAB. DAB is Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, that has been set up under the council of ICI. In DAB, there were multiple participation of the members of institute, and when DAB has identified the areas, broad areas where the need for that financial accounting and investigation standard was required. So going forward, if they feel like there is a revision is required, or there is any additional topic that needs to be incorporated in these standards, so that may be reconsidered by DAB, and that can be presented to the various forums for their opinions and for their for their consideration. And post the consideration of council members, past president, regional council, and study circles, these standards have been published by ICI and finalized by the ICI Council. So that is the basic framework how these standards have been developed over the years. Framework and definitions, again, so that we have already discussed, these standards are applicable on forensic accounting and investigation assignments. So what is forensic accounting? This talks about forensic accounting is basically gathering and evaluation of evidence by a professional to interpret and report findings before a competent authority. So whenever there is a need for conducting investigation in terms of financial and operational facts are involved, then we can consider into forensic accounting. Another is investigation, which is a systematic and critical examination of facts, records, and documents for a specific purpose. So please understand that each assignment in the forensic is a unique one, and each will require different set of procedures to follow when you are appointed for these particular assignments.
Madam, before jumping to next slide, we would like to point that your video is not visible to us.
Wait, is it now?
Yes, ma'am, that is visible to us.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Also, if you read out the whole standards, the complete set of standards, you will see there is a fixed format for a standards. The first, there will be an introduction and scope, like brief background and scope of the standard and its applicability is mentioned in that particular standard. What is the objective of issuing that standard and why it is required and essential? Then there will be a requirement, what is the desired outcome from the professional and what is the objective of the standard. Next there will be some explanatory comments if there is some need to clarify and elaborate some of the facts or key terms. The fourth section will speak about that. The fifth, documentation of the work procedure, how you will maintain the documentation in what is the requirement of as per the standard. You will get into the 5th section. And 6, what will be the effective date of that particular standard. So that is a basic about how the standards have been framed. Yeah, again. So being a professional, we all are aware about the attributes that are the credibility of the professional that is expected out of each of us, basically the member of ICI. So first is independence, then integrity and objectivity, due professional care, confidentiality, skills and competence. I understand we all have the basic understanding of these 5 areas. The next is performance, that is credibility of the engagement. So in that, we have contextualization of situation. As I already mentioned previously, that each assignment in forensics is a unique one. And you'll have to define, you'll have to plan the procedures according to the each assignment. So before getting into the assignment, you'll have to see what are the risks involved with this assignment and what can be the expected outcome of it. And then accordingly, you can prepare your procedure plans. Second in this is primacy of truth. So being a professional, your area will be, you'll have to unearth truth out of the facts and the situation. So in this scenario, you will see like how the facts can be modulated, how the facts can be help in framing the situation. So the second one talks about that. Third, respecting rights and obligations. So you have the right to find the truth, but the other person have the right to defend himself or herself. So the opportunity of being heard should be given to that particular person. Ninth, the next point is separating facts from opinions. So you must have seen in the interviews. So that is basically that depends upon the opinion of the source. So you will get the information from from the source, and that will be dependent on his or her opinion. So you should collaborate your facts with the opinion, then can get into the conclusion. The next is quality and continuous improvement. Of course, whenever you start an engagement, the situation may be different, and when you go forward, so there may be additional facts and into the picture, and then you should consider all the facts and accordingly modify your procedures to get the desired outcome. Are we good to go?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, series 100 standards and 200 standard will be taken care by me today in the first session, and 110, as we talked about, like identify the risk and the and the desired outcome of the engagement. 120 talks about identify the fraud risk. 130 talks about understanding the laws and regulations applicable to the assignment, and 140 talks about applying hypothesis for getting the for evidence gathering. Yeah. Sorry. So 110, nature of the engagement. So here, the nature of engagement is forensic accounting, investigation, and litigation support. As we mentioned, these standards are applicable on all forensic accounting and investigation assignments. So these standard will not be applicable to any audit or assurance engagement. And before that, we should have understanding what is forensic accounting assignment, investigation engagement, and litigation support engagement. So you should have the understanding. So basic requirements of the engagement and the nature of the audit. The second, where the mandate requires application of accounting skills to gather evidence, the concept of forensic accounting shall apply. This we have already discussed, like forensic accounting standards. If you go to the previous slide, you would have seen the forensic accounting is gathering of evidences and facts to present before the competent authority. And third talks about what is the investigation assignment, where the mandate requires the need to gather and evaluate evidences for a specific purpose, such as to help establish possible fraudulent intent or to identify possible suspects of fraud. The concept of investigation shall apply. So here in the investigation, you should have focused on the word intent. So intent is basically why the crime has been done, basically why this activity has been done. So only if there is a mistake, that will not be considered as a fraudulent activity. You'll have to prove the intent. That is a very difficult to prove, I would say. And the fourth is all stakeholders shall have the clarity on the nature of the engagement, which can be a forensic accounting engagement, an investigation, litigation support, or a combination of any of the aforesaid, but not an audit. So in the 110, you would see what are the requirements if there is a FAI engagement, that standard will be applicable. And when you are setting up the requirements of the engagement, so there is a documentation requirement that is mentioned in the standard. So everything should be documented. If there is a discussion with the stakeholders, there is an oral discussion, MOM should be documented. If there is a written discussion, that should also be documented. So documentation is a major part of every standard that you will see. So again, here is a complete definition of what is accounting services, forensic accounting services aims to highlight any accounting or legal violation, regulatory deviation, or contractual breaches through ascertainment of fact and gathering of evidence admissible before a competent authority. The focus area is critical examination of transaction, funds, and balances in the books of account with third parties, right? So there are a few examples what could be covered in the forensic accounting services. The first is financial statement manipulation, fund diversion, asset tracing, anti-money laundering, licenses, fees, dues, tax evasion, related party transaction valuation, valuation or estimation of loss or damage, suspicious transaction under insolvency and bankruptcy court. Investigation, again, there is a detailed definition of it. The purpose of investigation is to examine facts and circumstances and gather evidences to prove and disprove hypotheses formulated regarding alleged legal violation, unethical conduct, or the possibility of a fraud by suspected individuals. Here again, the nature of services which are indicative list of the investigation services are for fraud investigations, including cyber frauds, insurance, personal injury claims, ethical code of conduct violations, whistleblower complaints, asset theft, bribery, corruption, data breach, theft of intellectual property. So in each of the assignment, you would see there are some certain kind of allegations that are being imposed. And the professional should, from their work procedure, should have to see whether these claims or these complaints are actual or not, or whether the person who has conducted a fraud or not. So that is the purpose of investigation. Litigation support services are provide testimony before a competent authority based on FAI expertise and or to help facilitate some resolution to legal dispute based on the fact or circumstances. And the nature of services are alternate dispute resolution and testimony before the competent authority. So we all understand what is the risk. So here we are talking in the under section standard 120, we talk about the fraud risk. So FAI engagement involve the possibility of fraudulent events or suspicious transaction, define fraud, define risk, fraud risk, concept of risk applied in a fraud scenario. So what is the basic requirement of this standard is you'll have to see what risks are involved with this particular engagement. The risk could be, you should have the understanding of the area and the processes of the entity. So let's say when you go for an engagement, there may be multiple areas over there like PNP, finance. So in certain organization, PNP may be the concern area, or in other organization, finance could be a high risk area. So you must have read the fraud triangle, right? So fraud triangle talks about opportunity, and the rationale and the motive. So if there is an opportunity and weaknesses or gaps in the processes, so the person may have the opportunity to do some activities like the fraudulent activities. So you should always consider what is the high risk areas for your engagement, and according to that you should have plan your procedures. So this standard talks, the key provision and requirement talks the same about these. Undertake a preliminary fraud risk understanding of the areas and processes relevant to the subject matter of engagement, to understand the nature and complexity of the engagement, and to assign appropriate skill sets, right? Prioritize work to identify fraud indicator and focus on areas most vulnerable to the fraud. Give due consideration to the matters indicating fraud risk when reporting findings of the work completed. So to summarize this again, you should have to, this is all basically assignment basis. Each assignment is unique in the forensics, and one understanding on one particular industry may be different for the other engagement. So you should see what are the fraud risks with respect to your particular assignment. Yeah, there are some of the fraud indicators that have been mentioned. So the professional shall prior to taking out any work, he should identify fraud indicator. The fact that fraud is usually concealed can make it very difficult to detect. As we already said, that fraud is very intentional. If the basic difference between fraud and error is like fraud is intentional, and because of that intention, it is very difficult to get detected. Nevertheless, the professional may identify events or conditions that indicate an incentive and pressure to commit fraud that we speak about. That is, the opportunity is there and the motive is there, right? The frauds are generally driven by a motive to gain combined with the exploitation of a weakness in the system and rationalized and acceptable. So this standard again is similar to the fraud triangle that we have just discussed. There is an opportunity, there is a motive for the person to commit the fraud. Yeah, section 130 that talks about laws and regulations, right? So when you are going for any of the assignment, you should see if the assignment or engagement, that any laws and regulations are applicable on this particular engagement or not. Like recently there is a data protection law that has been introduced. If there is a breach of data, let's say in the company, and these laws and regulation of course will be applicable on the engagement. So before going into engagement, you should be cleared on the, if there is an assignment, basically let's say there is a mandate by the RBI or there is a mandate by the SFIO to conduct this engagement, the professional should be well aware about it. And the professional appointment can be accordance with the some specific law or regulation by a competent authority through a contractual arrangement with the client. So again, this is talking about what are the laws and regulation applicable on that particular assignment. So ensure that the objectives of the engagement are in line with the provision of those laws and regulations. So again, so when you start an engagement, so you set up some of the objective. What is the this expected outcome of this engagement? So you should see whether these outcomes are in line with the laws and regulations or not. And when you set up scope of work with stakeholder, then also that shall be consistent with the regulation, that should be relevant with the laws and regulations. So second point talks about that only any mandate agreed with the stakeholder through a contractual agreement shall be consistent with the relevant laws and regulation. So objective, that is the desired outcome, is equal to scope of work and is equal to your laws and regulation. These all three should be in line. There should not be any discrepancy in any of it. Engagement to be conducted in line with the relevant laws and regulation, which may stipulate the work or evidence requirements. Implement a process-driven approach to assist and identify any significant deviation or non-compliances with the laws and regulation. On complex and important matter, expert legal advice may be sought, and the principle of natural justice given due importance. So, for the expert legal advice, there is a separate standard 230 that should be taken into consideration while considering expert legal advice. I think we are to summarize this, we can say like desired outcome, its scope of work, and its desired outcome, scope, and the laws and regulation should be in line, and there should not be any discrepancy. If there is any deviation or non-compliances, that should be reported and that should be documented. 140 talks about applying hypothesis. So the basic structure of standard 140 talks about, let's say in each of the assignment, you get some of the facts. So since forensic, before that we have read out like forensic is an intentional act. So forensic engagements, basically they are, these are conducted to identify whether the fraud has been conducted or fraud has been made or not. So to identify these facts, you will not get 100% of the fact every time. You will get 50-60% of the facts, and others are basis the your opinion or conclusion. You will have to draft some hypothesis. So whenever you are going for an assignment, since you will not be able to get all the facts at a time, this standards come into picture. This is very important one. Hypothesis is a provisional unproven theory which needs to be proven or rejected. So if there is any allegation on one of the person, like who has violated any of the law, or who has violated any of the policy, so you'll have to conclude it whether it's proven whether that person has conducted this act or not conducted this act, basis the facts available to you. Applying hypothesis is a technique which makes the process of evidence gathering more methodological uh, and effective, right? So the facts so the requirements also talks about understand the apply the concept of hypothesis to help validate the possibility of potential violation which may or may not have perpetrated. Design FAI methodology in accordance with the considered hypothesis while maintaining neutrality to ensure a methodological and reliable approach. Hypothesis generated shall be flexible, evolving, and including new or alternate hypotheses to validate or reject them in order to prove or disapprove a larger theory or assumption such as modus operandi. After concluding an investigation, the professional shall be in a position to either prove, disapprove, or not prove the theory as formulated. So the crux of this standard is that only, like you'll the basis the facts available to you during your engagement, you should be able to prove or disapprove whether the person has conducted that fraud or conducted that violation or not. Yeah. The next is series 200. So 210 talks about engagement objectives that should be set up prior to agreeing to the terms of engagement. 220 talks about engagement acceptance and appointment, that is taking due diligence before acceptance any engagement. 230 talks about using the work of an expert whenever you required there is an additional expertise is required. So 230 comes into picture. 240 talks about engaging with external agencies, that is law enforcement agencies. And 250 talks about effective communication with the stakeholders. Yes. So, what is the purpose and objective of the below mentioned engagement? So, that is forensic accounting, investigation, litigation support engagements. So, before entering into any of the engagement, you should have understand and document what is the purpose of the engagement, what is the desired outcome of this engagement, and according to this desired outcome, whether this is achievable or not. That should be clear to you. So before and all these understanding what is the main purpose of the engagement, you should document it properly, and that can be as a part of engagement letter that can be documented. So understand and document the main purpose of the engagement. Scope shall be defined in line with the objective so that it is clear as to what is included and excluded from the scope. Expected outcome is in line with the objective and the defined scope. So of course, when you understand what is the nature of the engagement, and you should document what is the desired outcome of it. So accordingly, you will create a scope and you will plan your work procedure according to your scope and outcome. The objective shall not be designed to commit to any particular outcome. However, professional can draw reasonable conclusion based on the evidence discovered where this is a part of the mandate. And so initially when you have documented the objective and outcome, and you have defined your scope, but in the later part of your engagement, so you may come up with a lot of facts that require modification in the scope, then you should be ready for the modifications as well, and your procedure should be according to what the facts are facts are available to you during investigation or during your assignment. Again, there is a same that we have covered: forensic accounting services, investigation services, and the litigation services. I think we can skip this part because this is a repetitive. Yeah. 220 that talks about engagement, acceptance, and appointment, right? So engagements come with a degree of sensitivity and inherent risk. Like we understand, every assignment have its own complexity. So it depends upon the nature and nature of the engagement. Basically, what are the risks involved in risk involved with this particular engagement, and there need to be conduct the preliminary procedure and the due diligence while evaluating the conditions for appointment. So this section has two parts. Either you can be, let's say, your report or your report or your outcome that is being used in some of the other entities. So that reports is being mandated by the SFIO or being mandated by the other regulatory authority. That is also a risk area. You'll have to consider that factor as well during conducting your engagement. So undertake preliminary procedure, so everything cannot be identified during your initial part of the engagement, but at the maximum level, professionals should take the due diligence and care before accepting that engagement. And this due diligence directed to gain a assessment of inherent risk of accepting the engagement, identify all the stakeholders, basically who are the direct and indirect user of the engagement report, who will use your report in the coming future. And written engagement letter shall be signed, or a letter of appointment in the case of government agencies obtained to confirm the terms of appointment. So the engagement letter basically that defines about the terms and conditions should be a written one and should be properly documented. Yes, using the work of an expert. So, being a professional, you cannot have the expertise of every area. And during investigation, you may require additional person to step in, and that is the need of an expert. And for expert work, obviously the professional will only be the person who will be the responsible for the work of an expert. So that's why the professional needs to take due care before taking the expertise help of an expert. So expert is a person possessing special skills or domain expertise along with relevant experience and expertise in a particular area, field, or discipline. And professional may seek assistance and place reliance on the work of an expert. So whenever you are appointing an expert, you should have get satisfaction of the qualification and the credentials of the expert, because you would be the only one and the professional would be the only one who will be responsible for the deliverable of the work conducted by the expert. So and also, being a professional, you should have a access to the work performed by the expert, and there should be a proper arrangement that you can look into the work papers of the expert. So make an independent determination of using the work of an expert, seek the authority to select, appoint, and engage the expert, or to evaluate the independence and objectivity of the expert appointed by others, evaluate qualifications and credentials of the expert, participate in defining the scope and expected deliverables for the work to be conducted by the expert, evaluate the adequacy of the work conducted by the expert to ensure procedure undertaken followed a due process, and the evidence gathered constitute relevant and reliable evidence to support the overall conclusion being reported, retain ultimate responsibility for assignment conclusion of the expert, which are incorporated in the report. So the same thing, you can appoint an expert whenever you feel that there is a requirement and there is an additional expertise is required, but you should have the complete responsibility of the work performed by the expert. And please document all these, like how you have ascertained the qualification credentials, how you have defined the scope, what will be the expected deliverable. So all these should be documented as per the requirement of this standard. Yeah, the next 240 talks about engaging with agencies. So this standard has two part. One part talks about when you are appointed by the agencies, and second is when your work is being demanded by the regulatory bodies. or the law enforcement agencies. So there may be two types of interaction. You are currently working on an engagement, and a regulatory body comes up and says that they want your report, and this report can be used for their internal consumption. So then, or you are directly appointed by the agencies, right? So essence of this standard talks about required to interact or closely work with various agencies, and agencies here are law enforcement agencies and regulatory bodies. So you should agree on the basically you should have the defined objective, scope, and the procedure that you are supposed to follow on the engagement with these agencies. Again, I mean, you should, like we discussed earlier, like there should be an understanding of professor should have the understanding of what are the laws and regulations applicable with the respective agency and on the engagement. Comply with the basic principles that we have read: independence, integrity, objectivity, confidentiality. uh, be aware of the roles and responsibility in presentation of the facts before the agency, and due professional care should be taken with regards to the communication with the agency. So that prior to taking any agreement or engagement, you should have clear information about to whom you are interacting with and what are the requirement of these could be of these particular agency. So there is the list of indicative agencies for your reference, like law enforcement agency are CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation, Enforcement Directorate, Economic Offences Wing, SFIO, Directorate General of Income Tax Investigation, and Directorate General of Goods and Service Tax Intelligence. And below is the regulatory body, a list of regulatory bodies, that is RBI, SEBI, IRDI, and IBBI. Yeah. So last on this one, 250 communication with the stakeholders. So there can be a communication can be oral or the written with the multiple stakeholders, but all the communication should be clear. There should be agreed procedures and defined protocol with these agencies or with the stakeholders, like how would you communicate during the engagement, during the assignment, how should you what are the areas that they need to be updated, and how they want it to be to get this updated. So communicate, there should be clear communication, plus it should be well defined, like what will be communicated and how, what will be the time frame of the communication. So there could be a multiple matter that are required to be communicated, that we talk about essential matter and the significant matters. So till now we have read out the need for the engagement letter, the need to have the defined scope of work, the need for having the desired outcome. So all these will form part of essential matters, right? And these should be communicated on time to all these stakeholders. Again, the significant matter will cover, like so if you are not getting any support from the stakeholder, let's say, so that will form part of significant matters. And there is a loss of chain of custody that will comes up into significant matters. Again, there are any violation of law. So significant matter and essential matter that should be continuously communicated to the respective stakeholder. If there is an oral communication, prepare minutes of meeting for documentation. If there is a written communication, that should also be documented. So proper documentation and effective communication is the requirement of this standard. So essence is that defines what is communication, who are the primary stakeholder, who are the other stakeholders. So the appointing authority, as per the engagement letter, you from whom you have been appointed will be covered as primary shareholder, and other stakeholders would be other than what is described in the EL. So it standard talks about clarify the responsibility to connect with the primary and the other stakeholders. So key provision we can go through: communication in accordance with the laid down process and predefined pre-agreed protocol. Communication with other stakeholders shall be predefined and duly included in the process and protocol. All communication shall be clear, direct, independent, objective. and effective, and take into account the relevant laws and regulations, the form and content of the matter to be communicated, and the time frame of communication is based on the best judgment of the professional. However, professional shall communicate certain matters considered to be essential matter. Where appropriate, professional shall communicate certain matter to be considered to be significant matter, and communication with public or media shall be avoided. Yeah, here is the list of essential matters and significant matter. Like we discussed scope and methodology, written process and protocol of communication, laws and regulation applicable to engagement, support, cooperation required from primary and other stakeholder for access to information sources and for gathering evidence, engagement fee and any resourcing requirements, periodic reporting of engagement process as per requirements, and reporting format which may be specific to the engagement or prescribed by the legal or regulatory provisions. Significant matters, again, lack of cooperation by stakeholder causing significant delays, prevention of access, withholding of information, general repression, domination, or intimidation by stakeholder, potential conflict of interest with any stakeholder, alteration or destruction of evidence, break in chain of custody of evidence, and safety of life threatening situations. Yeah. Yeah, Tanushri. We can take up any question if there are.
Definitely, ma'am. Definitely. Your presentations and the words with which you have explained, it's very much clear to our viewers that there are two pillars of forensic accounting. The first one being the gathering of evidence, and the second one being the documentation, and documentation. And especially, it's not about gathering of evidence or documenting every single thing that we get in the process. It's about ultimately the proving of mens rea, because the very process of forensic accounting revolves around whether the evidence is proved in the court of law, whether we are able to get into the perpetrators and the process, or the mechanism that they have used, what are the internal control breaches that they have taken place. But we have some suggestions from, we have the presence of many viewers. I would like to take some name, that is CA Rishabh Demlani sir. From Haridwar, we have the global presence of Megha Vijayan madam. From Zimbabwe, we have the presence of Raman Babu Desvi from Vishakhapatnam. We have the presence of KR Raja Ram sir from Chennai. So it's a huge presence of audience. It's a huge presence of viewers, and your PPT and the words which you have explained, it's very much clear that testimony and essential matters that has to be communicated in our reports, whereas the significant matters are the matters that depends upon the professional skepticism of the or forensic accountant, that whether it needs to be reported or not. Thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us with the sharing of your knowledge and with sharing of your practical insights, that how the terms of engagement has to be taken care into, and how the process of forensic accounting can be started, and what are the things that has to be taken consideration. It's really great to have your
Thank
presence
you.
on such a short notice, and being enlightened with the sharing of your knowledge, madam.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next in line, the second session will be taken by CA Uday Kulkarni sir. CA Uday Kulkarni sir is having the professional experience of more than 2 decades. Not only sir is practicing chartered accountant, but also he is certified internal auditor, certified information system auditor, and qualified insolvency professional. His main focus areas are information system audit, cyber security, forensic audit, and IBC advisory. CA Uday sir has wide experience in the various types of information system audit, external audit, and internal audit, fraud investigation, and due diligence, and many other assignments that he has taken. Apart from practicing, sir is a national faculty for Bank Concurrent Certificate course and Forensic Accounting course of ICAI. He has imparted training on various aspects of forensic auditing, money laundering, legal aspects, and cyber security for legal and investigating officers in Sri Lanka, Nepal CA Institute, RBI Academy, SCIO, SBI Credit Risk Academy, NIBM, and many other such acclaimed facilities. Sir, definitely we would be have been benefited by your webinar and being wisdom of yours, the knowledge that you are carrying. We would like to grasp it in the minutes to come.
Thank you, Tanushree. Thanks a ton for your kind words and the way you are introducing. It's very spontaneous and very powerful. And thanks for all that things. Only one correction I would like to tell to all the viewers, all the participants in this webinar, that now we are departed from the word of audit, at least from the forensic area, right? So as far as the standards or whatever we are going to talk about the forensic, henceforth we are not going to talk it as a forensic audit, or I'm not calling myself as a forensic auditor. Maybe that could be the older version of my introduction. That could be with you, but we have to take care that as of now, we have to call ourselves as a forensic professional. And all the assignments which we are going to carry, either it could be the forensic accounting of a nature, forensic investigation, or the litigation support kind of an activities which we are going to do under this forensic area. Okay, but besides that, good evening to all the participants. Let me share my PPTs for you.
Yes, sir, your screen is being shared.
Yeah, thank you, Tanushree. Thank you very much. So I'm going to cover from the 300 series. Okay. The 300 series is basically for the execution part of this forensic accounting and investigation related aspects. Most of us are very well aware about how we execute and perform our engagement as far as the audit is. Other types of the audit I'm talking about, it could be the internal audit or it could be the external audit. So we are all of habitual to plan and execute the audit assignment. But there is a difference, as I said, because the forensic is something which is related to the legal proceedings. And always we have to keep in mind that whatever the methodology we are going to adopt, whatever the planning we are going to do, ultimately the compliance is as it is mandatory for these FAIs or for the standards. All those documentation and compliances also be the part sometimes which may be called in the court proceedings, because now since the standards are available for the guidance of the professional, that is one aspect to look into. But another aspect is that the oppositions who is going to challenge the forensic report, or who is going to challenge whatever the findings are in any legal proceedings, there could be the cross examination of the forensic professional possibly, and in that the questions could be planted by the opposite side, that how you have complied with this forensic accounting and investigation standards. And of course, when we are talking about the compliance in the whole aspect, not related to one or just two standards, but all the whatever the standards are there, whether one has made a compliance with that. So in a way, it is a guidance kind of and things, but another way it could be the tool for the opposition to challenge some of the findings or challenge the report also. From that point of view, whatever we are discussing here in the standards, the thing needs to be implemented. And I hope it is suggested that the participants not only go through the standards, but because standards are required to be answered some specific point, but how to implement whatever the provisions are there, what should be done, that is specified in the standards, but how that need to be complied with, and what the professionals should actually do for the implementation of the standards, that is something guided in the IG implementation guide. So I request all the participants to refer both these publication with, so that you will once you get the standard and get the example, get the actionable point and how to implement that in that implementation guide. So both these documents are very important. and not just one document, because that may put a lot of questions and difficulties in, and you feel that it is very difficult to implement, but it is not so, because in the implementation guide, the participants will find example, basically the cases. What we have done when we developed these standards, that we plan that all the professionals who are going to conduct this forensic assignment, they should get an idea with an example, with an cases, so that they would be very well aware about how to implement and how to make the compliances with these standards. So my suggestion is to go with both these documents. So let us come for this execution part. Of course, all the processes which we follow for the execution, what we do for the execution, we plan the assignment, then we think the methodology, how to collect the evidences. According to the methodology, we apply the working procedures, right? And in the work procedures, one important aspect of this forensic is to take the interview, to do the inquiry, so that additional evidences, additional triggers could be gathered around. And ultimately, it is a teamwork, right? So the review and supervision on all the execution part is equally important. And ultimately, all these things needs to be explained to the competent authority, isn't it? So all this procedure is part of the execution, right from the planning to the explaining to the competent authority what needs to be done in between. So for each of these area, you will be surprised that these are the specialized kind of and standards which are available. So you will find that when we are talking about planning the assignment in the forensic, what needs to be considered, right? So since beginning of the standards, there are two words which are continuously getting used. One is engagement and one is assignment. So in many of the standards, these words are sometimes used. In some standards, they are using the terminology as an forensic engagement. In some standards, we are going to call it as an assignment. Whatever the 300 series is basically focusing upon the assignment. Why it is so? Because engagement could be comprising of number of assignments. Okay, or you can say the assignment could be the part of the engagement. So there could be a possibility that the whole fraud needs to be bifurcated in a small assignment, and that is going to be helpful for the professional, and that would be helpful for submission of the report, and that would be helpful for the person who is appointing the forensic professional. So the reporting format, the output of the report, that could be easily understood, that could be easily conveyed. And second thing, the total control will be there from the forensic professional point of view to plan and to execute the things, because different assignments. So one could be related to the IT, specifically focused on the IT kind of a fraud, which could be the part of the larger area of the fraud. So if you say that the procurement fraud can be complicated with the IT related fraud. Let's say that. So it is better to break up those things in a smaller assignment. Let us plan for procurement related fraud. Let us plan for the IT related fraud. Let us think about the discussions, methodology, and then see where it's getting interchanged, and accordingly you can plan the things. But when we are talking about the planning here, so what is required for the planning? Okay, so as we all know that for a planning of any forensic assignment, we should have the knowledge of the particular business and the environment, because most of the frauds are played because of the weaknesses in the internal controls, and thereby the opportunity has been given to the fraudsters to play around with the fraudulent transaction or fraudulent circumstances. And if you don't understand the business processes, then where that fraudster has played, where he has found the internal control weaknesses which he has exploited and taken the advantage of, that may not be possibly helpful for our planning. So it is essential that before you plan, the requirement is that what is the sector, what is the business, in which area the person with whom we are working for this forensic, they are providing services or manufacturing the product, their manufacturing process, detailed business knowledge is very essential. Along with that, the environment, because most of the businesses are running with the digital environment. So most of the business processes might have been configured with the digital environment. And why it is important to understand these processes, because if those are totally digitally, the businesses are working in a totally digitalized environment, then at the planning stage itself, the forensic professional will understand that the most of the evidences needs to be gathered from this digital environment. and he will assess that whether that forensic professional is having a sufficient knowledge to extract those evidences from this environment. If he does not have the knowledge, then at the planning stage, he can plan that, okay, I will have to take the help of the expert who is having the expertise in extracting those evidences, right? So that is the thing which will give you from the knowledge, total knowledge of the business, along with the business processes and the environment under which it is working. Second is the risk consideration. So when we are planning for the you can say the engagement, or for a bigger term I'm talking about for the engagement, there could be the different red flags. Normally we call as a red flags, but here in this we can say as a fraud risk or the risk indicators. So what could be the risk indicators? So probably there could be one risk indicator, there could be the combination of the risk indicators. I think that has been discussed in the earlier standards, which talks about 120, which talks about the fraud risk. So those risk consideration is required to be considered. Why it is so? Because every risk requires to be addressed by different methodology, right? So what could be the risk? So there could be the risk that the third party is also involved into the manipulation of certain transaction, and we may need to extract the evidences from the third party. So the challenges could be there, the methodology could be there, which needs to be adopted for the extraction of those evidences. So what are the fraud risks? What are the risk indicators? Because the forensic professional is well aware about the red flags, right? What we are calling here as a risk consideration, those normally we call it as a red flag. And we need to understand that red flags itself are not the evidences, but red flags gives you the indications towards the collection of these evidences. So when we are talking about these risk considerations, we can get the information about the risk consideration from the understanding of the background before planning stage, when the appointing person will explain you why you are getting appointed, what is the background. At that point also you can capture some of the red flags, and the way you are progressing in the assignment, sometimes also you need to consider the additional risk which are coming in between the processes, and that also needs to be considered for the planning stage. Discussion with the stakeholders, of course, because what is his expectation, what he wanted to as a form of an outcome. Basically, at this stage, it is better to have an understanding, because the forensic assignment as such does not have any fixed format of outcome, or does not have any fixed format of reporting. So every stakeholder may have its own format. Every stakeholder may have its own expectation. Of course, the expectation needs to be tuned with whatever are suggested in the standards, because at the reporting stage there could be a lot of confusion, and at that stage, after performance of all your things, then the stakeholders say that, oh, no, I was not expecting this. Okay, I was expecting certain different. So that should be avoided, and I will talk more about that when I'm going to the standard related to the reporting, how it happens, what could be the expectation gap. So I'll give the example there. Okay, so because as I said, medical forensic, if you take the example of the medical forensic is well stable. Now in the medical forensic, everybody knows what would be the come out. So outcome could be in the medical forensic, okay, the cause of a death or cause of an injury, and the timing of the injury, and all this is coming out of the medical forensic. Similarly, in case of an forensic accounting, it is the detailed trace of the asset, or it is the detailed trace of the money with the supporting conclusive evidence. That is what needs to be come out of this whole exercise. But sometimes the appointing person, they may have their own idea, so they are expecting more from the forensic expert. So that is not possible, and that needs to be understood. That needs to be discussed at the initial stage. That is the same. As I said, understanding the environment will allow you for deciding the technology deployment. Let's say that at the planning stage, if you consider that a huge data needs to be analyzed to get out of the fraudulent transaction, it could be possible that you will have to churn out a very large voluminous data, and it is not possible manually that every transaction needs to be analyzed to identify which are those fraudulent transactions. So it is better to have one data analytics expert with you who can do that task with the predefined, hypothesis and all this. So according to that, you can decide. Some assignments could be of a legally complicated. So legal terminologies, legal agreements needs to be verified by certain processes. So all these things needs to be well considered at the planning stage, and along with that, you can allocate the resources, right? Just before coming to this webinar, I was addressing the other seminar related to the forensic of this PUF transaction under the IBC. So there was a question that what could be the size of the team when we are going to conduct the forensic. This is a very challenging kind of an assignment, because every assignment is a unique one. You cannot compare the one assignment with the another, because the environment differs, the allegation differs, the technology differs, the transaction differs. And there I suggested that, of course, it is depending upon the size and the background of the case. That is the key factor. And along with that, how much complexities are involved into that cases. And I suggested that within a minimum time, if you want to give good results, so resource allocations having the qualified kind of a personnel is expected here, because here if you employed the person who is not having the expertise or having little bit expertise, who is trying to use the trial and error kind of a methodology, then that is a consumption of a time, and we are not able to deliver the report within the expected time. So that needs to be avoided. And expert resources, if we have to assess what kind of an expertise we are having, what expertise we don't have, and those experts need to be called for, and that's how this resource allocation needs to be decided. Important part of this planning is the work methodology. So as I said, by understanding the background, in some cases the work methodology could be easy one. The most of the cases when the forensic professionals are getting from various investigating agencies, let's say from police or from the CBI, what most of the time they will give you the evidences. Whatever the evidences they have collected, you will have to only analyze, you will have to only find out or trace out the fraudulent transactions and evidences ratio. So you don't have to work too hard for the collection or gathering of those evidences, right? So all the efforts are put by these agencies. So at that stage, it is a bit easy to apply the method. But in fraud cases where no agency is giving you any evidences, and you have to gather the evidences and then you have to analyze that, then at that stage, methodology as per the risk consideration. Here, the methodology is going to be supported by your understanding of the red flags or risk consideration. And those things need to be keep in mind while developing the methodology. Relevant elements of the plan to be communicated. So how we are approaching, how we are going to perform the assignments, what would be our methodology that needs to be communicated to the primary stakeholder, right? Sometimes their help is required, because let's say that we may require the cooperation from the third parties. It could be their supplier, it could be their service provider, like the cloud service provider, or it could be the legal experts from their side. Their help also may be required. So all these things needs to be initially communicated to the primary stakeholder, not to all the stakeholders, but to the primary stakeholders, so that they can make the arrangement to get the cooperation from all those expected ones. So this is all the things which we need to identify, understood for this planning stage. Now, the second important standard 320 is talking about evidence and documentation. See, there is a difference between both this terminology. One is talking about evidence and the other is talking about documentation. And we need to understand what is the difference between two. And exactly this standard is to guide the forensic professional to distinguish between what is evidence and what is the documentation. The basic objective of the forensic is to collect the evidences and evidences which are acceptable to the court of law. That is the punchline. So when we are performing the assignment, we collect a lot of documents, or our team may also collect a lot of documents. And every team member may feel that, okay, this is an evidence, right? Because that is an enthusiasm there, and they feel that, okay, something we have achieved by collecting this document, and this document will prove the allegation or disprove the allegation, whatever it may be. So, but the forensic professional who is now understanding what is evidences. So we are calling it again and again, the evidences is not, because there is a difference between the audit evidence and there is a difference between the forensic evidence. Audit evidence we gather for the satisfaction of the auditor in person, right? So he may think that, okay, whatever the statement which is downloaded from the internet bank by the client and which gives me the balance confirmation, that is okay to confirm the balance which is appearing in the balance sheet as an audit procedure. Okay, so that is his call. As far as the evidence is, now the same evidence I cannot accept for the forensic, even though that is an evidence, but that is a evidence which is useful for the audit purpose. But the same evidence is not useful for the forensic purpose. So if I want to submit the same same balance confirmation statement which the client has downloaded from the internet site, then there are certain provisions under the Indian Evidence Act. By complying those provisions, I can then submit that document as an evidence. Right. Either I can do that or I can ask my primary stakeholder to do that particular job. So then he will go to the bank site, he will take the sign and signature of the particular bank staff, and then that could be the evidences which could be acceptable. But this procedure is known to whom? To the forensic professional. May or may not be all the team members knowing this thing. And also sometimes even the forensic professional himself is not sure enough that whether this could be acceptable as an evidence, because we are collecting so many documents and obviously we have to do that. So he should be able to classify which document he is going to rely upon as an evidence. But the test is that it is the evidence which is acceptable to the court of law as per the Indian Evidence Act, as far as India is concerned. And he should classify those, because those evidences needs to be submitted along with the report, attached to the report, on the basis of which he has to draw the conclusion. And those evidences, it could be in the physical paper-based format, or it could be in the electronic format, whatever it could be, or the statement which somebody has made during the course of interview. This could be the three format in which the evidence could be collected. But understanding point of here is that all those documents which we are calling as an evidences needs to be first testable for submission as an evidences. For that purpose, the forensic professional himself can decide, or he can take the help of a legal expert. And then he can draw the conclusion on that basis. And then those documents which we are calling as an evidence needs to be submitted along with the report. That is must. Now, what the documentation, other part of this standard we are talking about, documentation which could be the working papers. In the audit, we call it as a working papers. So other part of the documentation is our working papers. So our planning, our methodology, our work procedure, our resource allocation, our questionnaire. So when we are putting the questionnaire to the certain stakeholder, our questionnaire, right? Or our procedure of gathering particular evidences. Let us say that we have to collect the evidences from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So the procedure is that we have to make an application, we have to make the payment of fees. And so whether we have made the payment, whether we have made an application, so a copy of that is part of our document. That is a part of certified copies of that, whatever we have done, that could go as an evidence. But the back office work which we have done, we have applied, we have paid the fees, the chalo of that could be our working paper. So those things which we are going to use our working papers, all those things which I have mentioned, that will come as an documentation. And we have clearly mentioned here that ownership and custody of the documentation shall remain with the professional. Those working papers need not be submitted along with the report. If in legal proceedings, somehow they will ask. So the compliance document in this whole standard, if you see the para 5 talks about what kind of a documentation is supposed to be maintained by the forensic professional to demonstrate that he has complied with these standards. So that documentation is a part of these working papers, and those documents need not be submitted along with the evidences. Right. So that ownership and custody will remain with the forensic professional. If there will be the challenge, how you have proceeded ahead with the forensic and all these things, at that time in the court proceeding, perhaps it will be required to show. But ultimately, the ownership and custody is remained with the forensic professional. That is what is coming out of this standard, and that is what is guided. 330 is talking about execution part of the work procedure. Now, actually, we are on the field or off the field. Both could be possible. So some tasks we can do off the field, some tasks we have to go on the field, and we have to, like in the audit also, something we analyze in our office, and some part we go on the field and we analyze the transaction, we verify the transaction, all that thing. So same thing is here in this conducting of the work procedure. So as a work procedure, first at the planning stage, we have developed our methodology. In the methodology, we have developed what activities needs to be carried out. And again, all the activities are importantly directed towards the only one part, that is collection of the evidences. Evidences acceptable to the court of law, which should be relevant and reliable. Relevant is very important because many of the times we don't know whether this evidence is required for this disputed matter or not. So that is also one part. So our work procedures, our methodologies should always be targeted about the collection of the evidence. That is the only single point with the objectives all over. And once we get the evidences, then the further part starts about the conclusion part, right? Now, when we conduct this work procedure, as I said, we may do a lot of things behind the scene. That is the phase one here we call. What is the behind scene? Okay. Behind the scene means the first thing, the hypothecation that might have been discussed in 140 of the initial part. So hypothecation is the, you can say the possibilities of the way the fraud might have been conducted. So possibilities could be different. So like the police, they also develop the theories by which somebody has committed a murder or something like that. Who could be involved? What could be the intention? So there could be the different possibilities which they could evolve around. Similarly, if even in the case of the fraud, I can say that there could be the different possibilities. There could be possibilities that multiple modus operandis might have been involved with the different intentions. So all that analysis, all that brainstorming, and accordingly building up the work procedure. And for that purpose, whatever the things we need to evaluate, we can call that information from our stakeholders and we can analyze that sitting in our office also, or by verifying the documentation, which is nowadays available through the digital platform. So that, and we can develop our questionnaire on the basis of whatever the information we are generating. Initially, we may not jump directly for the interview. Whatever the information first we can gather. We can gather that, and only after that we can prepare for the information on the basis of whatever we are collecting. So all that could be covered in the phase one, and then accordingly, what needs to be done on ground. So after gathering of all this information, we can decide now we have to go to the X supplier. He might be giving us certain evidences. He will confirm whether he has supplied the goods, what could be the rate, what could be the price, and all these things. So perhaps we may require his confirmation, right? So for that purpose, we can directly communicate or we can communicate to the primary stakeholder, and then we'll try to visit. Sometimes in one of my fraud, we have to confirm the existence of that particular supplier. Actually, he was nowhere there. He was given just fake addresses. But how can I confirm? Unless and until I visit that place, whatever the address that has been mentioned in that invoices, I have to go, I have to visit, I have to confirm that there is no such existence of that particular supplier. So these things require the involvement to engage ourselves with the stakeholders, and we have to be there on the field. So which are the activities which we can do behind without engaging with the stakeholders, and where we have to engage with the stakeholders. All those things needs to be pre-decided. That can be well worked out at the stage of methodology, at the stage of planning. But sometimes what happens, since this is forensic, it is not a structured kind of anything. Sometimes you get some information which already was not shared with you. So we call it as a table surprise. So sometimes you get the table surprise. So once you get the table surprise, then you'll have to change your methodology. So your hypothesis is also going to be changed. Then you have to again formulate the new hypothesis. You need to test all these. You need to change the methodology. So all these things are guided in this 330, right? So work procedure, how to develop the work procedure, how to conduct the work procedure, and how to change on the basis of certain additional information we gather during the course of our execution part. So that is addressed in this 330. 340, important one, interviews, right? Interviews could be of many ways. This is a forensic or investigation kind of an assignment. Sometimes your formal methodology may not work. Sometimes your informal methodology may also work, because a lot of information you can get in between the lines also. And that could not be actually get communicated directly by a particular person during the formal kind of an information. So it is a, what you can say, it is a skill of a forensic professional, how he is planning for the interview, how he is planning for all these things. But as far as the standard is concerned, the standard is talking only about a formal structured interview. Okay, so it is not referring to other types of the interview. So it is the structured and the formal meetings, and that needs to be with the proper documentation, because suddenly you start taking the interview of any of the person who is if he or he is not informed well enough, then perhaps that could be the threat to prove that information as an evidence, right? And under the Indian Evidence Act also, there are already challenges for whatever the oral information we are gathering to submit it as an interview, as an evidences. So what is mostly important that how you plan the question. Okay, planning the question, asking the question is again a very skilled kind of an activity. So if you start directly acting related to the fraud question, nobody will answer that. Okay, so everybody knows that why you are taking the interview. So we have to develop our own methodology. Whoever is going to take the interview, he or she should be well trained enough to that is all the communication skill, because how we communicate, how we call for the information. Sometimes it is important to get the information without knowing the other party that he is disclosing some important point. That is also skill set. So that is, I can say, intelligent job. Taking the interview is an intelligent job, and that's why there is a separate standard divide. So we have to first, as I said, well-trained methodology needs to be developed internally. And I know there are certain forensic firms which train with certain mock interviews, or they have developed videos, right? How to put the question. So that is going to be help a lot to the person who is going to take the interview. Sometimes while taking the interview, some precaution needs to be taken, right? So if you are going to take the interview with certain women and all that, so we have to ensure that along with us, a lady should be accompanied. That at some company, at some entities, it is required that their representative will not interfere in our interview process, but he will just act as an observer. Observer in the sense he will coordinate that the things will go smoothly. He will make all the resources with whom we have to interview in a right manner at the right time, so that the time could not be wasted. Perhaps we may do the audio or video recording with the consent of those with whom we are taking the interview. So for that, all the arrangement needs to be done. So how to do that in a proper professional manner, that has been guided. And most important, that whatever the information we are gathering through the interview, we need to put it as an evidences. For additional documentary evidences are required to be collected. So the moment we are thinking about the interview, we need to corroborate the statements with the collected documents, which we can submit as an evidences. So that is all that is explained in this specific standard 340 as an interview again, right? Next one is 350, review and supervision. As I earlier said that the forensic is a teamwork. Okay, so it may involve number of people with a number of different skill sets. Some may be in the legal experts, some may be digital forensics, some may be the data analytics expert, and other team members also who are taking the interview, who are collecting the documents and all that. But the target is that, see, most of the forensic assignment, the appointing person, they give you very little time as such. And in very little time, you have to achieve a big target of collecting the evidences, which ultimately will be tested in the legal proceedings. So time is essence, skill set is essence, and application of skill set within that limited time effectively, that is the essence. So these are the three essence when we are actually executing our work procedure. And for that purpose, there should be a review mechanism, there should be a supervision mechanism, right? So what is the difference between, again, what is the review and what is the supervision, right? So all these parts are also again differentiated. So what is a review? So review means, now let us say that you are appointed one person to take the interview. So before going to the interview, you have to ensure as a part of the review that what questions they have planned, how they have planned, whether the person who is going to take the interview, he is or she is well trained enough. And as I said, certain precautions are required to be taken, whether the arrangements are properly made, and documentation of all these things are done on my working papers or not. So that is a review. So each working phase, I am taking a review. So let us say I have sent one of the staff to the supplier to collect the evidences. Now there exactly what he is going to do. So pre and post review. So once before visiting that supplier and after visiting that supplier, what task he has performed and whether it is going to support my investigation, that needs to be reviewed. That is we call it as a review. Okay. And what is supervision? Supervision is related to the target of the time, whether we are going into the same direction. Otherwise, I am investigating the procurement for fraud, and one team is analyzing the data related to the sales. If it is required, we can do that. But otherwise, it could be the waste of the time. Because they should be clearly focused on one particular task or one particular aspect of this forensic assignment. So supervision is required first, training, guidance, and overall, whatever we have planned, whatever the milestones we have decided, whatever the time targets we have decided, whether those things are getting achieved or not, that will be covered under this supervision. So the first thing is that before starting of the assignment, all the team needs to be informed about that. And at every stage, basically, the review is important because again, I may say that many of our team members will come with a lot of documentation and they say that this is evidence. And only the review mechanism, if your review mechanism is strong enough, you will be able to classify whether this will be eligible for evidences or this will not be eligible for the evidences, and further efforts will be required. Right. So this task is very important under the review part of this standard. Now, testing before the competent authority. What happens? Now here, first we have to understand what is competent authority. So competent authority could be the adjudicating authority. Who are the adjudicating authority? Of course, the courts, the NCLTs, the tribunals and all that could be the adjudicating authorities. Who could be the competent authorities? Competent authorities may include your investigating agencies like the police, CBI, or enforcement directorate, etc. And what is testimony? When we are talking about what is testifying, testifying refers to the providing the information to these competent authorities. So what happens, as I said, forensic 99% or 95% is a legal part. Right. Nobody will, on a routine basis, they will ask for the forensic. Only when there is a legal dispute or possibility that dispute may go to the legal proceeding, only then and then the forensic may take place. Right. So in that case, what will happen? In most of the cases, after the report or during the process, some investigating agencies may be involved. Possibly that most of the time the assignment is handed over by the investigating agents like the police or CBI, etc. Right, isn't it? So they have their own investigation methodology, and as a part of their whole investigation methodology, they are appointing the forensic professional. That could be one part. But again, whatever we are covering in the forensic, whatever we are identifying, whatever our conclusion is, that needs to be explained to those in that process also. Sometimes what happens that a company independently is appointing us. They are having some suspicious of a fraud and they want to investigate that. And on the basis of our report, they may further take the legal action. So then they will file the FIR with the police or CBI. Then the matter will go ahead in the legal manner. So in that case, what happens? We are not appointed by the investigating agency. We are appointed by the company. Though we are appointed by the company, our findings are used for further legal action. So in that case, those competent authority will call us. Explain karo what you have done, explain us, because you are closely associated with the investigation. So explain us how you have done, what was your methodology, what was your evidences, how you concluded. All that answer needs to be given to the competent authority. And that is what exactly we are calling it as a testifying. So testifying refers to the information and evidences which is required to be given as per the legal proceedings, right? As per the legal procedure. And sometimes when the matter goes in the court of law, for further part of the legal proceeding, of course, the court will ask us for the cross-examination. and there our examination would be done by the appointed advocates by both the parties, and that is a challenging thing. In all this process, that is a challenging thing, because we all know how the court proceedings happens, and if we are not well studied about our assignment, then possibly we may not be able to give the answer at that particular time with the particular expectation. So that is again a skill set. I mean, many of the times, many of the professionals might not have appeared in the witness box, and for the first time when they are going to appear in the witness box, so how to prepare for that testification, right? That is again they feel very challenging. So how to prepare for that, and for that purpose again I will recommend go through this implementation guide where we have given each and every aspect, because what precautions we needs to be taken when we are appearing in this courtroom, and what could be the questions that may be and needs to be answered, and how to prepare for that. That is very interesting also, but that requires a lot of understanding, study, our involvement. If we are deeply involved, and if we are well studied, and if we are ready for all the evidences which we have gathered and confident enough, then this would be the easy phase. Otherwise, there would be a lot of challenges. And what is the impact would be that your report, the value of your report depends upon how you behave in the cross-examination. Right. So your cross-examination needs to in sync with whatever your findings. Otherwise, even though your report is very strong, but you failed in this testimony, then that could have an impact, negative impact on the total legal proceeding. So that here we have to take it up, and that is all guided in this 360 standard, right? The 400 series, we call it as a series related to specialized areas of standards, right? And purposefully, we have adopted that the 400 series to be included as a specialized area. And if you look at what we have included in this 400 series, so we have included the data analysis, we have included the evidence gathering in the digital domain, and we have included the loans or borrowings as a specialized area. Perhaps there could be many more areas where we can include under the standards, under the series of 400, because just I said the IBC, the PUF transaction under the insolvency and the bankruptcy code, that again requires a specific different approach, even though it is a forensic kind of an assignment, but it requires bit a different approach. So all those areas that could be considered as a specialized areas, and those are included to be guided separately under the 400 series. So the first part or the first standard under this 400 series we have covered is the applying of the data analysis. Now, everybody, even in the ordinary audit, even in the stat audit, or even in the internal audit, we know the importance of the data analysis, the Excel-based analysis. At least every chartered accountant is well aware about the importance of analysis. So the same importance, I can say much more than that, is there in this forensic field. So why we require the data analysis? First thing, why we include it as a specialized area? Because it requires some specific skill set. That is the first thing. So you may require the skill set to analyze the data. It could be the expertise in the Excel-based analytics, or it could be the Python-based or other language-based analysis which you can develop. Anything as per your choice. But this is a specialized skill set, and when you are going to apply the specialized skill set, you should consider all the factors or all the aspects related to that data analysis. So the first thing here we have to understand that the objective in the forensic assignment of the data analysis is we need to discover the pattern of certain irregularities, right? So it could be the number of transactions with the related parties, right? Or inconsistent activities. So abnormality in the invoices amounts, right? Or any other anomalies. Why it is so? So it depends again upon our hypothesis. Right. So why? Because the fraud and the risk, the red flags or the risk indicators that will able to support you to form the hypothesis, and hypothesis will be useful for your data analysis. So I may have a doubt that the particular transactions they have done with the related parties, and there is no movement of the goods and services and they are not done with the arm's length prices. So I want to gather those transactions from the whole set of transactions. Now I am having the fixed hypothesis in my case. Okay, so I have identified this is a related party. I have identified, I want to check whether the goods and services are moved in and out. So I need to find out from that data, and I need to find out the price variation. So same transaction is done with the X party and same transaction is done with the related party. What is the variance? So my objective is fixed, isn't it? And I will churn out all the data, whether it is in multiple lakhs or multiple crores, whatever the number of transactions. I am having now fixed objective, and according to that, I am now planning for that data analysis. So objective needs to be fixed on the basis of your assignment related objective first thing, and the basis on the which you are developing your hypothesis and testing of that. Then the second thing is that how much data we need to analyze. Okay, for that purpose, we should have the data analysis plan, DAP, right? So as I said, when we are talking about the data analysis plan, we are asking about the quality of the data. So what should be, because you can extract that data directly from the database by applying certain queries, right? Or you can ask the database administrator to give us that data. And another possibility that they will give you the number of reports, which we may able to convert in the Excel based application, and then we'll convert for our suitable purposes by picking up some fields, and then we will analyze. So in the data analysis plan, first we have to understand what quality of the data, what the fields of the data that is required, and how we are going to extract that data. So all that things needs to be decided in the data analysis plan. And now the plan starts with the data acquisition first, of course, the data acquisition. So as I said, for the data acquisition, perhaps the data is readily available, or you will have to extract by using the digital forensic scale. Both is possible. Some data, here data don't assume only numerical data. Data could be in the form of pictures. Data could be in the form of photos. Data could be in the form of communication, right? And all that data also needs to be analyzed. So don't restrict ourselves here. Data means only the numerical data, because most of the forensic professionals, chartered accountants, so they may think that, okay, data means only numerical data. No, it's not like that. Data could be anything. And that data acquisition, as I said, data analysis plan, why it is required. So if you want to see, if you want to extract the photos, if you want to extract some videos, which are available on the social sites. So that is also required, right? So how we are going to acquire that data, that is the first thing we have to think about, we have to plan about, and then we are going to analyze that. Then data validation. As I said, some data will be available as we are expecting. Some data will be available in a piecemeal format, which we have to validate and prepare for our own requirement. But in doing all these things, what we have to keep in mind, whatever the steps we are following, so how we are acquiring, how we are validating, how we are preparing, the documentation of that as a part of a chain of a custody and chain of evidences needs to be kept in our record. That as a part of our documentation. If you remember, we talked about 320, the documentation and evidence. All this is a documentation part, right? So that needs to be kept as a doc. Then we have to ensure the data integrity, right? So if we are extracting the data from different resources, there would be the question that whether the same data is reflecting both the transactions or there is a difference, right? So it is possible that let's say that I need a date of birth, right? For certain purposes as evidences. So when I'm extracting that data from X resources, I'm extracting the same data from the Y resources. So at that time, if both the resources are giving the two different dates of birth, or the prices are differing in both the resources, then there will be the question that which data I have to take as an final evidences, right? So data integrity needs to be ensured. Adherence to the data boundary, that is important. Why adherence to the data boundary? First thing, data boundary is having multiple aspects. Data boundary is from the periodicity point of view. So for how much period we require the data? So today I have been appointed for the forensic purpose. So for last 5 years data is required, last 2 years data is required. So periodicity point of view, that data boundary is required. Data boundary is from another aspect. So whether I require the data only for the procurement aspect, whether I require, when I'm talking about the procurement related product, sometimes I need to see the consumption part in the production also. So my data boundary extends to the data related to the production. So these things needs to be decided. What type of an data we are asking about, and what are those boundaries with the periodicity, with the area, and our requirement of specific elements of the data, and whether those data is giving us or not, that needs to be ensured in all these stages, right? Then after we collect that, of course, we have to process, we have to prepare the data in our own format, and then we have to process with our hypothesis and with the analyze order. During all these courses, we have to ensure the data confidentiality, because perhaps we ourselves are not carrying out this assignment. Our expert may be carrying out, who could be the third party who is not within our firm. So we have to ensure that the NDA is entered into, and he's going to take care about the data confidentiality. It should not. And again, one more aspect is nowadays, that is DPDA, that is Digital Personal Data Protection Act has come into the picture. Of course, there are certain exemptions for the legal purposes, but in any way, otherwise also under the code of ethics, as a chartered accountant, we have to maintain the confidentiality. So what techniques we are applying for that confidentiality, and only when required the data will be made available for the related law and regulatory purposes, that we need to ensure. And of course, all these things, whether we can do, whether we can outsource, all the things needs to be decided at the planning stage. So that is what is expected in this data analysis skill set. The next one is evidence gathering in the digital domain. Even though the name sometimes makes a bit confusion, what is this? And I mean, evidence gathering in digital, it's in a simple language or in a day-to-day language, we call it as a digital forensic, right? So, and it is now well known that almost all the organization or all the entities where we are going to conduct this forensic, most of them, as I said, all of them are working in this digital environment. And whatever the data we are going to collect, most of this data is coming from this digital domain. So, and it is recognized under the Indian Evidence Act as an electronic records. Though we call it as a digital evidence or digital gathering of evidences from digital domain or digital forensic, in the law, it is recognized as an electronic records. And sometimes we confuse. Sometimes we say that, suppose we have taken a printout of a ledger extract. Suppose for a particular assignment, a forensic assignment, I have taken a printout from a particular accounting software. So generally, we are having the impression that printout is a paper-based document, and that's why it is a paper evidences. But that's why the difference is there. It is not a paper evidence. It is not a paper document. It is actually the electronic record. Because at that time, we need to understand what is electronic record. Electronic record is well defined under the Indian Evidence Act. So any data which is extracted from the record which is kept in the electronic format, that is, so printout is obviously the electronic record. Then the way we are presenting, we have to consider the provisions which are there in the Indian Evidence Act. So we should have an idea that what data we are going to extract from the digital domain. But this is a very simple line to say, but when we have to implement what is required. So at the planning stage, as I said, we should understand the business and the environment. So in this case, we have to understand the whole information systems environment or the digital environment. Why it is required to be understood. So let us say that we require the data for data analysis. And data could be stored in number of format in the digital domain. So it could be on any particular PC. It could be on the server, which is located in the premises of our client, or it could be in the co-sharing environment. So some third party is maintaining those servers, or it could be in the cloud environment. As of now, there could be 4 possibilities. So where exactly is the data? How can we come to know unless and until we understand the information system environment? So when at the planning stage itself, we should be well aware. Once you understand the background, then you should understand that what type of an evidences are required for gathering of the evidences, what kind of an data is required to be analyzed, and where that data is stored, and what are the systems through which the data is getting passed. Because let's say in the banking environment, let's say there is a fraud which is related to the digital channel related transactions, right? So when digital channel related transactions frauds I'm investigating, I should know where the transaction files are coming from, how it is getting stored, where it is getting processed, and how the ultimate results are getting posted into the customer's account, and then how the data is going to be ultimately stored. So if I don't know whole set of process, then I may not, because the fraud could be at any stage during this process. So somebody might have manipulated the source file. Somebody have manipulated the particular software. Somebody might have manipulated the results of that particular things. Even let us take a simple example. So there is a process called bulk uploading for the payroll kind of a transaction. Okay, so there are 1,000 employees, and the 1,000 employees' salary needs to be credited in the particular bank account. So what most of the techniques the banks are applying, uploading of an Excel file. Now, in the Excel file, normally what as a normal auditor, what we see, what is the total amount of salary? Let's say 10 lakhs, right? So total of the Excel coming to the 10 lakhs, and 10 lakhs is getting processed. Okay, 10 lakhs ko 10 lakhs tally ho gaya. But in between the accounts, somebody have manipulated. So instead of crediting my account with the 1 lakh, they may have broken down that account into the other accounts. So total is tallied, but somebody might have modified that Excel sheet before processing that as a bulk uploading in the software. So if I don't know the process and I don't know the controls over that, I may not be able to extract that kind of data from that particular purposes. So that's why we say that before gathering of any evidences, before coming to any conclusion, you should have a well understanding about the information systems environment. You gather the information, understand where the data is located, understand how that is processed. And of course, who have done CISA or DISA kind of things, if they are having the experience, they may be able to do that. But if most of them, they don't have, because see, what is the challenge in that? The original data should not be anyhow hampered, because ultimately the chain of evidence, chain of custody, and if the test of reproducibility, that is the important test. Even if you see the provisions of the Indian Evidence Act, one important test that is suggested, that is test of reproducibility. What is that? So whatever the results we are producing after extracting that data as an evidences, so all that is called as a secondary kind of an evidences, right? It's not a primary, it's a secondary. So if the court further orders that we don't believe or we don't trust you with this data, do all that processing in front of us and let us check whether the outcome is same or not. That is the test of reproducibility. So while gathering the data, we have to keep in mind the test of reproducibility, the results what we have extracted and the results if court orders, both needs to be same. Otherwise, there would be no value to our evidences which we are gathering. And these things are not, because when we are gathering, we have to see that the original remains intact. For that, hash value mechanism and all other things which are there in the digital forensic and the chain of evidence, chain of custody needs to be properly documented. And all those devices needs to be carefully handled, because otherwise when you are gathering the data will be get damaged. That should not also happen, because if you don't have enough knowledge about how to extract the data, possibly because of your certain wrong clicking, whole data may go away. So that should not happen. And for that purpose, the technology which we are deploying to extract the data and the legal provision with which we are submitting the data, both the things should be known to the person who is doing this task in the forensic total work procedure. And to guide that particular things, this specialized standard we have guided. Again, I'm saying that the standards needs to be read with the implementation guide. You will get examples and all these things, right? And that's why now you can understand this is not a regular kind of an activity, because most professionals are not doing this on a regular basis. So this is a specialized kind of a skill set. So if you are having that, you can apply. Otherwise, advisable is to take the help of certain expert person who is having the knowledge how to extract that data with all these understanding of the provisions of the law. The next standard is loans or borrowings. Many of the participants may feel that what is the purpose, that why these loans or borrowings is included as a specialized standard. So let me tell you now, in India at least, whatever be the frauds which we are reading or we are watching on the various news channels, most of them are related to the loan frauds. So many cases are pending in the various courts, and the PMLA action, money laundering related actions, or other actions are initiated, and the amount is also sizable. Okay, it starts from 12,000. If you can go to the upper side, it can say that 12,000 up to the 50 crores also. So the range is totally, you can say, wider range is there. And so there was most of the forensic professionals, they are still getting the opportunity for the forensic engagement in these loans or borrowing related frauds. Most of them are getting good opportunity, and I agree that this is a good field to be engaged in, because there are still frauds are getting surfaced from various banks, financial institutions, Ponzi schemes, and all this stuff. Okay. And that's why we thought that there should be a specialized standards on these loans and borrowings. But here again, one has to understand that what is the title, loans or borrowings? So title is equally important. Why it is equally important? Because when we say loan frauds, many of the professionals think that okay, loan frauds are related to the banks. So whatever the frauds which has taken place in the banking sector, the accounts classified as an NPA, default in the repayments, and then the bank has ordered for the forensic. Yes, those typical frauds are covered under this standard. But in addition to that, there are other frauds equally important. So sometimes in some companies, the unsecured loans are given by person to person, not by the bank. Okay, person to person. Or some friends, forget about the company, even in the partnership firms. So you can take borrowings from your known persons, relatives, or the connected persons, like that. Sometimes even the shares, the amount for the shares, for the preference share or for the equity shares, they raise the funds with a particular purpose. So there could be possibility that this amount which is collected as a shares amount, as a preferential amount, or as a debenture amount, that has been misutilized. And the person who applied for the shares, they are not giving the appropriate share certificate or all the benefits. So all those funds related frauds, you can say, all those funds related frauds are covered in this 430. So that's the specialization. So it covers the banking loan frauds, but in addition to that, it covers all the other types of the borrowings, including personal borrowings. Even X has given some borrowed amount to Y, and they may go under dispute. So that dispute we also covered under this 430. So that is the power of this 430. So it is having the wider area. And what is the basic element of this loans or warranted fraud? Basically, the purpose for which the funds are requested for, those funds are not utilized for that purpose. So I may go to the bank, I may say that I want to construct the factory shed and give me the borrowings. And instead of constructing the factory shed, I will diversify that amount for other purposes. And basically in the personal borrowings also that will happen. So I will tell you, okay, give me certain money I need for my education purpose, I need for this purpose, that purpose. But actually I am siphoning off that funds by engaging in certain other activities. Right, like a speculation kind of an activity. So purpose, you are communicating X purpose, and you are utilizing the funds for the Y purposes. So basically all the loan or borrowing related, I can say that 60 to 70% of the loan or borrowings related fraud are having the elements of the misutilization of funds. So how to apply the forensic skill sets for the misutilization of these borrowed money or the funded money? That is well guided. First thing, we have to ensure that for the banking sector, for the financial institution, for the companies or for cooperative societies, all these borrowings and funding is well guided by their statutory provisions. Right. So one of the provision in the Companies Act that if you are borrowing more than double than your own funds, then you have to pass the special resolution by asking for the extraordinary general meeting and all that. So all that provisions sometimes may not be complied with. So that could be the regulatory incompliance and then siphoning of the funds. So both the things are there. So when the forensic is going to apply for this 430, I mean, he's going to engage himself in this 430. First thing, he should be aware about that legal framework. What is the framework in the Companies Act? What is the framework in the Cooperative Societies Act? Because largely, if it is a company-related fraud, so let us say that company has borrowed the fund, misutilized, siphoned off, and the bank account, loan account has been classified as an NPA, and now the forensic is on. First thing, we have to ensure that if it is a term loan, then what is the project report? All right. And what the project report talks about, and whether the loan is utilized, loan is disbursed as per the project report or not. And very few people in India may understand that there is a specialized section in the Companies Act, that is section 36, which talks about that if by submitting what you can say, the fake documents, I can say, unrealistic documents, you are submitting, and on that basis, the company is obtaining the loan from the banks, that itself is a fraud under section 36. So the forensic who is going to do the corporate loan fraud related things, he should be aware of that, right? And when we are talking about the intention is that misutilization of the funds, then agreement, the loan agreement is study, and all the legal framework he has to consider. And ultimately, what is the most important part? Misutilization and all these things have happened, where the money has gone ultimately. So in that case, money tracing, fund tracing, or the asset tracing is an important skill set that one should have. And that is what is guided under this 430. And we have given certain examples. As I said, most of the frauds are related to the utilization of the funds, which are not as per the agreed terms and condition. Second could be that loan itself are granted by unethical means. There are a number of cases where the bankers or the financial institution, they are colliding with the borrower, and they are sanctioning the loans without doing the proper scrutiny or appraisal, and without following the delegation of power. In some cases, you might have noticed that evergreening kind of an activities are followed, so that a particular bank or particular financial institution do not want to classify a particular loan account as a NPA, so they will sanction another loan and they clear the dues for these old loans so that they can avoid the NPA classification. So all these tactics are also utilized while disbursing the funds and sanction. So all these are also needs to be find out, and for that purpose, the forensic is also. So utilization is one part. Applying the unethical part, that is the second part. Sometimes everything is right, but the application of interest, that could be the part of dispute. So how the calculation of interest has been done, whether that has been done correctly or not, that could be the matter of dispute. And sometimes, as I said, the falsified documents related to the property, related to security, related to my income part, I'm submitting the false document. A classic example is a stock statement, because which is utilized for the drawing purposes, right? So whether that stock statement is matching with my inventory records or not, and without matching, I'm just ad hocly submitting the stock statement. That is a falsified document, right? So these are the tactics which are used. So nature of disputes could be like that. And these needs to be investigated. And that's why we have given a special guidance under this 430, which could be very widely useful for the professionals. The last two standards are 510 and 610. So 500 series and 600 series. Important one is reporting results, because that is something which everyone is looking eagerly, right? What is coming out of the report? Not only the person who is appointing us, but even the media, the other stakeholders, they are also interested. What is the outcome of all the investigations? So they are eagerly waiting for. Okay, so reporting is very, very interesting, and as well as very challenging job in this whole segment of the assignment. If you have planned very well, if you have executed work methodology, it is always said that in any engagement, you should focus 60% of your time in the planning, 30% on your execution, and both the things have done properly, then you will have to involve only 10% of your time in the reporting. But many of the times the professional do ulta. So they involve 10% in the planning, 30% in the execution, and 60% in the reporting. Okay, so that should not happen. So within the flow, you should get the information. Within the flow, you should get the evidences so that readily you can come to the conclusion. So what is expected again? Professional has to keep in mind the opinion is not expected in the forensic. Conclusion is expected in the forensic. So conclusion could be what? And that is an interesting point, because in the beginning, as I said, we have to discuss the outcome. I mean, not the outcome result, but the format in which we are going to present our report. That needs to be discussed and communicated at the planning stage itself, because reporting in the forensic does not have any specific format. Like for the statutory, there is a specific format, right? So we use that or apply that particular format for the stat audit reporting. Here, there is no such specific format. Company to company, entity to entity, agency to agency, the format may differ. They may have their own format in which they are expecting the results. So first, when we are planning the assignment, at that time only we can ask what is the format, what should be the content. Another matter of challenge, many of the times, which is important in this reporting, and that's why, as I said, many of the person who is appointing us, they expect that you name the fraudster. You name in the report that XYZ has done the fraud, he is the fraudster, and he should be punished. That is the expectation in most of the cases. The person who is appointing, they are doing with that. But they don't aware that law does not give any permission. The law does not give any authority to forensic professional to do that task. As a forensic professional, I cannot name XYZ as a fraudster. That is not the authority with me. What at least I can say, again, I will go to the medical forensic. In the medical forensic, what they do, they will say that, okay, the death is caused by a particular bullet. The size of the bullet is this much. That might have been fired from this much distance, and that has been reached inside of the body this much, and that could be the cause of the death, whether on the left side, right side, and all these things. But you can't expect the medical forensic expert to say that, okay, this XYZ has fired that bullet. How can he say that? It is not like that. Now, that is the task of the investigation agency. Now, you know the cause of the death is bullet, size of the wound or size of whatever the injury that has taken place, as in the medical forensic report, the particular size of that bullet which is extracted from the body. Now they can take the further investigation, kiska bullet hai, whose pistol it was, and all that thing. So that is the task of whom? That is the task of the investigation agency. So similarly to that, in the forensic accounting, what we can say, yes, this fraudulent transaction has done. So it is debiting XYZ's transaction. It is credited to PQR's transaction. So one is beneficiary, one is loser, whatever you want to comment upon. Then it is routed through TView Keys account. And then ultimately the SMP has purchased a particular asset also. So you can write all these facts. So I'm mentioning here XYZ के account से root हो गया है, PQR में चला गया है, and ultimately SMP has used this for purchasing the asset. All these things are there. We can write it. But because of that, I cannot say that XYZ is a fraudster. SMP is a fraudster. That is ultimately the police. With the help of our report, whatever the evidences we have gathered, of course, that is important. And on that basis, we will say that this transaction has happened, because that is a part of our asset tracing. That is a part of our fund tracing. All right. And then that will be there in the report, of course, supported by the evidences. And then the further task, whether to name XYZ as a fraudster, whether to name SMP as a fraudster, that call will be taken by the police. And most of the time, the dispute or the confusion occurs between the forensic professional and the appointing person here. They wanted that XYZ is a culprit. He should be named as a fraudster. But in this report, if you look at the point number 7 here, I want to attract the attention of all the participants here in the point number 7. Under the key provision, the report shall not express an opinion or pass any judgment on the guilt or innocence of anyone. So here I am not talking that he is not done, he has done. I don't know. Whatever has happened, bullet andar ghus gaya, that I am talking about. I don't know who has fired that bullet. Bullet has gaya hai. I will go up to that stage. Okay. So account has debited, account has credited, this person has received the amount, this person has paid the amount, ultimately this person has purchased the asset. I have found all these things traced and I'm reporting that. Of course, with the support of my evidences. Further, I don't know. Right. I can even say that, okay, what was the purpose of the loan? Loan purpose was to construct the shed of a factory. But my evidences says whatever the evidences are, there was no construction on that particular site which is mentioned on that loan agreement. I can even capture the photo for that evidence purposes. So there was no evidence that the shed was constructed. And the same when he was routed from X to Z, Z to M, M to P, and ultimately P has purchased the house. I can give that much in my report. But because of that, all these persons are fraudsters or not, I cannot comment upon. Or whether they are innocent or not, I don't know. But this is what has happened. This is the fact supporting with the evidences I'm talking about in my report. That is exactly what should be the outcome of the report. And that is what we. Now, what happens during the time of our execution? Sometimes all the documents will be available, will not be available. Some evidences might have been even destroyed. Okay, because the person, once you start the investigation, the culprit may start to destroy the evidences. So they will destroy the hard disk, they will destroy the computer, they will destroy the documents. So this situation may arise. Sometimes you will get the threat, live threat. We have experienced that. So you will get the live threat. Okay, some will plan to kill you also. So that becomes a serious threat to your person. In person, you are facing the threat. In that situation, you may not be able to collect the evidences. Right. So these are the stoppages. These are the stoppages. Sometimes the borrower will not cooperate with you for giving the information, because in case of a loan fraud, of course we expect that we will visit the borrowers, we'll want information, we want some documentation from that borrower. Borrower will simply deny. What can you do? Because you cannot move ahead further. So this could be the stoppages. Now, what is requirement? What is the required? What is suggested in the standard for all these stoppages? So first thing, refer to 250, communication with the stakeholder. It talks that whenever such stoppages are faced, then immediately you have to communicate these stoppages to your primary stakeholder, who is your appointee. Then that person may able to resolve this non-cooperation. He will try. If he will try, and if the non-cooperation will be resolved, it will take certain time. So your timeline will be get extended. That also needs to be communicated. But non-cooperation will now convert into the cooperation, so you'll be able to extract the evidences. That would be first possibility. Even after his try, the counterparty may say that no, I will still not cooperate. So that will become the stoppage. You will not be able to collect the evidences, and for that, in that case, particular point you will not be able to conclude upon. So one of the aspect of your assignment, which is essentially, so you'll not be conclude upon whether the money has gone. What the borrower has done, borrower is not cooperating with me. So I don't know whether he has purchased the house, whether he has utilized for any other, I don't know, because he's not cooperating with me. Right. So I am unable to comment upon. So don't use your assumption there. Don't use your opinion that in my opinion, he might have used for any other. That is not required. Simply you say that we face this challenge, we communicated to the primary stakeholder on this date. Till the submission of this report, we are not received any cooperation. We are not gathering, we are unable to gather any evidences because of the non-cooperation. So we are unable to conclude. That is also you can mention in the report. So don't hesitate to mention like that. Sometimes the report could be submitted stage-wise. Some requirement of the assignment that if there are, as I said, number of assignments. So they say that, okay, you submit stage-wise report. So that also needs to be considered. Some may say submit the draft report. Some may say submit the interim report. And then you go for the final report. It is possible that whatever the outcome is there in the interim report, in the draft report, after that, you will get the additional information and your conclusion may differ. Because recently the Supreme Court has given one judgment in that they say that whatever the report, forensic report, in case of a banking sector, they said that you have to submit it to the concerned parties, to the borrower. So you have to give that report to the borrower. Borrower may then come and they say that no, this transaction is happened like this and this is the additional evidence. Because that is a natural justice. This is a process of natural justice, right? We have to give the opportunity to everybody. So at the initial stage, he's non-cooperated, but once we put the point, then he started cooperating and say that no, this transaction is happened. This is the evidence. So we can again verify. And when we have drafted the report, when we submitted that, our conclusion was X, but because of the additional evidences, our conclusion would be Y, right? So we have to mention both these things, that at the initial stage, this was the conclusion, but because of the additional evidences so and so, our conclusion is now Y. So that needs to be also communicated in well manner in the report. So all these aspects, I mean, right from the format until, as I said, the deviation or all these things needs to be keep in mind. But certain key elements which are must in the reports. So first thing, the title of the report along with the assignment, what type of investigation we are doing, to whom we are addressing the report, because in the statutory audit we know to whom we are addressing the report. In the internal audit also we know we are addressing to the management. Similarly, it needs to be get cleared at the initial stage, at the time of acceptance of the engagement, to whom I am addressing the report, right? At the initial stage, at the time of acceptance, we should be very clear to whom we have to distribute the copy of the reports. So subsequent that question may not arise. It may be possible that we can say that, okay, we will give the report to the primary stakeholder and then the primary stakeholder will distribute as per their requirement. That is possible. But that needs to be crystal clear at the time of acceptance of the engagement. And that should be the part of your communication, and documentation should be there. The report should contain the scope and objective. So what was the scope? What was the periodicity? What was the background? And on that basis, what was the objectives? So all these things needs to be clearly mentioned in your report. Then our methodology, what methodology we have followed on the basis of our scope and objectives, because it needs to be in sync. So the work procedure and methodology we have followed, that needs to be discussed in detail in the report. Then in that case, if you are going to take the help of an expert, legal expert, or let's say the digital forensic expert or data analysis experts, because whatever their comments or their findings, ultimately it is our responsibility. We have to include their report, experts report. So after doing their task, they will also submit certain things to us. So we have to discuss with them and we have to include their comments in our report with our responsibility. So where we have used the work of an expert, who were the experts, whether the experts were given by the particular primary stakeholder or we selected the experts, all these things needs to be mentioned in our report. The fact that assignment has been conducted, so compliance part. So if you see the statutory audit report, we say that we have conducted the statutory audit according to the accounting standard issued by the ICAI. Similarly, now we have to make a tagline that we have conducted this forensic assignment in compliance with this forensic accounting and investigation standards. Then, of course, the finding part. So what we have found, what is the source of those findings? And now, so you have to correlate, tag with that findings and the related evidences one-to-one, and then the conclusion on the basis of that. So this is an in sync that should be there. If any assumptions, limitations or disclaimers, what is the limitation? I have spoken it about non-cooperation, threat to life, destroying the evidences, all that could be the limitations. So that could be there. Sometimes you have to quantify the amount. And when you are quantifying, you may have to keep some assumptions. Let's say we have to quantify the losses, and there we have to take the interest rate into the consideration. Now, what interest rate you will consider? So I may take the market interest rate, I may take the bank particular interest rate, I may take the different interest rate according to the periodicity, according to the at that time market. So that is my assumption. And by applying those interest rates, my quantification will change. So if I'm applying those kind of an assumptions, I will have to mention that I have considered this interest rate because of this is, and at that time the interest rate was there. This is the evidence for it. So my assumptions backed with the evidences I should be there, and of course conclusion on the basis of evidences and the summary reports, because we have to summarize all these things. So executive summary of all the report and important aspects that needs to be given in our reporting. So these are the basic thing. Whatever be the format of your report, But these key elements must be there in your report that every forensic professional has to ensure about. Next part is the quality control. That is our inner quality. Right. What does this mean? So if our firm is specialized in the forensic engagement and my firm is only focusing on the forensic, so I have to ensure that my service does have certain quality benchmark. Right. So I have to take care about the quality of every assignment, every engagement. Also, I have to take care about the overall performance of my forensic department in my firm. So both the ways, quality parameters, quality benchmark, and quality assessment process that we call it quality control review is essential. So when we are performing, because see, this is, as I said, this is unique one. It may not have the same result or same outcome. And that's why quality aspect is very, very important, because again, the evidence point of view. Okay, otherwise, evidence ek bol raha hai, our conclusion alag ja raha hai. So that should not be case. And whatever the report we are submitting, the report is an important part, because if we do not report correctly, it may bounce back on us also, some findings. If we if we start loosely commenting upon in our reports, so sometimes some other parties may challenge our report and they may take legal action against us. That is also possible, right? So to avoid all these things, we have to ensure that before submission of the report, the quality of our whole assignment needs to be assessed by the partner who is not a part of our team, who is not a part of our, who is aware about all these quality aspect, but who is not a part of our team. And to do the total assignment of my forensic department as a firm, at least I should carry out the peer review. So I may take the help of the external firm who will assess the performance in the all forensic engagement within a year, and they will point out the loopholes. It could be related to my documentation, it could be related to compliances, it could be related even to the interpretation, some of the laws, regulations, or the standards. So all these things needs to be, and for that purpose, the quality review mechanism, quality review process. And what is the purpose? Purpose is that from every assignment, if we do perform this quality assessment, we learn something new. Right? We learn something new. Right. So whatever the mistakes we might have done, we may try to improve that, which is pointed out in our quality assessment. So that is the basic purpose. And additionally, in the standard, it is suggested that all these forensic professionals who are engaged in the forensic assignment, at least they should earn 5 CP hours from the mandatory CP hours of the ICI. So that is one recommendation which is there out of these quality control related standards. So I hope this is all from my side. And if any questions or any thoughts which the participants do have, I am ready to take it now.
Definitely. So there are some questions. If you would like to interact that, we would like to put up the questions.
Yes, sure.
Questions? Sir, what is the role of technology relating to forensic accounting and investigation? Like, how has the domain been changed in the past and in the present, where technology is playing a pivotal role in investigation as well as in forensic accounting?
Yeah, I worked in both the area. I have done the investigation in the paper-based, records, and I am doing it right now in the technology related records. So yes, the tremendous change is there. The thought process may not be changed. I mean, the way we are formulating the hypothesis, the way we are suspecting something, or the way we are examining, certain aspects during the forensic. So that may not, that intelligence is not changed. But the way to verify that, first, I will have to analyze all the 1,000 transactions by one by each paper and all these things. So that was a tremendous task, time-consuming task. But nowadays, the same task you can do with the technology, easy technology. And there are a lot of tools. And I may say that this could be the new opportunity. Even those who are having both the skill set, I mean, technology like AI, blockchain, with the forensic algorithms. Okay, there are a lot of things to be done in these forensic algorithms. So if one can look at an opportunity in that, so he can develop AI-based, blockchain-based, all the algorithms which can be placed as a tool, and that would be easily analyzed. So a lot of technology is going to be, and obviously that is so because of the use of the digital domain in every sector. Right. Even as I said in the last webinar before coming to it, there was a good interesting question that they wanted to value the consumption of internet bandwidth. In one of the forensic assignment, they wanted to analyze the value of the consumpted internet bandwidth. So that is something, you cannot expect in every assignment. So the technology has impacted a lot, and the answer for this kind of technological questions is only in the technology area. So there I have to find out the ways how can I identify. There are of course there are a lot of techniques and technologies available which will give you the consumption pattern and all these things. But yes, impacts are there, and with this digital domain, a lot of technology can be used, and that is not only it can be used, that is an opportunity to find out the solution for the easiness of performance of this forensic assignment.
And what is the difference of previous idea or proponent of being the watchdog rather than being the bloodhound, as the auditors used to carry?
See, personally, my personal opinion, of course, it is not the opinion of ICA or other, but it is my personal opinion. I never liked that idea to be called myself as a watchdog. First thing. Okay. If you see the evolvement of the audit, if you see the how the audit as a profession has started, so it is started with the expectation that there is no mistake, there are no errors, and there is no fraud. Historically started with that expectation of any stakeholder. Then slowly it changed its gear into the different ways. So I will just express true and fair opinion. I will not go into that. I will do the sampling kind of and things and all these things. And that's how now the audit profession is different, forensic profession is different. Because in the audit, we will not suspect or we will not use the skill set of the investigation as we are using in the forensic. And that is not supposed to be. Of course, whatever the laws, whatever the regulations, whatever the standards, auditing standards are there, they are not supposing to go to that extent, right? As an investigator in the day-to-day audit. But of course, now what is changing? What is changing is the expectation of the stakeholders. Now the expectation is that I don't understand what is true and fair. I don't understand. As a stakeholder, as a layman, I don't understand what is true and fair. So give me, because what is happening, you are submitting the reports, you are saying that the true and fair view is there, all the things are intact, but suddenly the news is coming up that the company is winding up because of the fraudulent transactions. So why this is happening? So layman is not understanding because there are different things happening behind the scenes, which is beyond the auditor's scope and all these things. But the layman does not understand. So I don't know. You are audited and you are given the true and fair view opinion, and then the fraud is suddenly happening. So all the blame starts from the audit. And then the forensic will come into the picture. So I think this is the question related more to the expectations from the various stakeholders. They are expecting more of accuracy in your audit reporting. And if you want more accuracy in the audit reporting, then you will have to apply the forensic skills in your auditing kind of an profession. So that could be the answer for that.
That is, the chartered accountants with the attitude of Sherlock Holmes can be the good forensic.
Yeah, that. But as I said, it depends again. Scope, laws does not support that, but the expectations are changing towards that. That is the only view.
Definitely, sir. Change is only permanent. It's always going to come.
Yes.
And one more question from our viewers, that what are the basic understanding of the entity and its business that we should get while planning stage?
Yeah. So basically, at the planning stage, when I am saying that you have to understand the business. So first thing you have to understand that whether it is manufacturing service oriented. This is the first thing you have to understand. What is that sector is related to? So whether it could be the, that's like the steel sector or the banking sector or the finance sector. So you can broadly understand. Why understanding is required? Because every sector has its own rules, regulations, and the you can say the procedures, right? The second stage to understand is you should have a good knowledge about the business processes. So according the product company, the product manufacturing company, the business processes is different from the service sector company, right? Even I put this question to many of the participants, even when we do the bank audits. So when we go for the branch audit, so we feel that we know the business of every branches, because even not as an auditor, we are the customers of the bank. So normally as a customer also we know the business of the particular branch. But if you go and understand the business from the auditor's point of view, you will understand that many of the business processes you are not aware about, how they are functioning, what are the processes. So how the transaction flow takes place within that business processes, that is, so there could be the sales process, there could be the procurement process, there could be the inventory related processes. All the processes looks outerly similar, but when you understand from that particular business point of view, you will find that there are certain minor changes as per that particular company and their procedures. And the most important thing, if without understanding the business processes, you can't expect the evaluation of the internal controls weaknesses, which has given the opportunity to the fraudster to exploit that things. And now these things are digitalized. So not only the manually you have to understand the business processes, but how they are configured digitally, because ultimately you have to extract the evidences. So all that knowledge is essentially required for that purpose. So we can say that at least you should have a good walkthrough before the planning of this assignment.
So one question from my side, if you permit.
Yes.
Why we call these standards as forensic accounting standards rather than calling it as financial or audit standards? Why don't we call it as financial audit standards? Why we are focusing it as accounting standards?
Yeah. Basically, we from the starting we have taken the view we are not going to call these services as a forensic audit. Right. The moment we start calling it as a audit services, then the expectations of the counterparty and the feel inside of the professionals. So audit is related to expressing the opinion. Most of the audits, they express the opinion, right? The expressing the opinion is having a different process, and arriving at the conclusion, that is a different process. So conclusion is a strong conclusion that this is what has happened. I'm concluding that yes or no, or unable, whatever. And that is on what basis? Evidence again, which I have explained. The audit evidence is different. Forensic evidence is, it is not my choice. It is the choice of the court of law. Right. So audit procedure differs from this forensic process. That is number one. That's why we started avoiding the use called as a forensic audit, and we are now calling it as a forensic accounting. Now the question is why we are calling it as accounting. That was a part of your question. Why we are calling it as accounting? The basic thing is that we ourselves call as a chartered accountant.
Correct.
Does that mean only we do the job of an accountant? No. Even we call ourselves as an accountant, we do various type of services. We do audit, we do due diligence, we can do this forensic. So we are not calling ourselves a chartered auditor. Never we call it. We call it a chartered accountant. So accountant includes all these services. So even the forensic title is forensic accounting. Accounting involves this investigation, legal support, all the services. So that is a broader view which we have taken when we are discussing about how to name this forensic standard. That is one. Now, whether to use the word financial, of course, not necessary, because once we take the view of a financial accounting, as you are suggesting, so we are restricting ourselves. So what we will do, we will handle only financial dispute. We will handle only financial frauds, but it is not the case. We are handling all types of the business frauds. Right? There is a tree. There is occupational fraud, there is a bribery related fraud, there are other types of the frauds. So we are handling all the various types of the frauds, not only the financial frauds. Even the contractual breach, that could be there. Okay, for the performance of the services. It may involve financial, it may not involve financial. So we don't want to restrict ourselves to the financial dispute only. That's why we have broadened the way and we are calling it as a forensic accounting and investigation, inclusive of services, inclusive of investigation of all types of the dispute, business related. I'm giving the name as the business disputes or the business related frauds. That is the purpose.
Correct. That is the wider aspect that we are going to see. That is the reason that the term forensic accounting and investigation standards has been chosen over.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. And India and ICI has been the leading body that has taken the initiative of standardizing the process, standardizing the best of the world practices into the standards.
Yeah, you will see that in the total forensic science, I'm not restricting now only to accounting or business fraud. If you see the forensic science, there are more than 100 branches of this forensic science, right from your hair to, from our nails. So there, for all body parts, you can say there is a forensic science. Apart from that, technology-based forensic is very much different. So in all these forensic science, in accounting world, ours is the only one in the total accounting world globally. That is unique one. And considering all the forensic science, only other forensic standards available, that is for some digital purposes. Apart from that, there are none other standards available for forensic science also. So totally looking at the outer area of the forensic, this is the second standard. Accounting में तो पहला है, but in the forensic science, this is the only second standards. So that makes one more thing unique in that way.
We are proud to have such accomplishments.
Exactly.
So, what are the skill sets and what are the personality developments that you would suggest for any young professional to bloom in this status?
First, they should get good experience in the auditing, normal auditing. So they should be aware. Of course, I am assuming here that all the chartered accountants are expert in the accountancy. So I will not repeat that. Okay, that is the assumption from my side. And they are well aware about the accounting standards, accounting procedures and all that. That is assumption. But they should have a good sizable experience in auditing field. That is one requirement. So once you get the feel of auditing, internal controls, evaluations, then you will be able to understand the complexities and you will develop yourselves with the investigation kind of a skill set. What is more required here is the reasoning ability, investigation skill, inverse kind of an logic, kind of an concept. So when I look at particular object, rather than looking with whatever is appearing, I should think from 360-degree for that object. So, and that is something we call it as an investigation skill. So if you have that investigation skill set, so it will develop. I cannot say that immediately it will come. So, but slowly when you will start taking experience in this auditing field, you will definitely will come to the stage where you will get that investigation skill and investigation approach. So investigation approach, we use the word skepticism in the auditing. So here we can say that double skepticism is expected. If in audit we expect single skepticism, in the forensic we expect a double skepticism. So that things we need to, and of course, legal, regulatory knowledge and business related knowledge, that is must. So these three things we have to keep in mind.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. I think my viewers will definitely take these considerations and suggestions so that they can also take into this line.
Yes, definitely.
So, how do you look the past and the future of this service line?
So do you want to increase the number of frauds in any country? Nobody can expect in any national economy, right? So if I say that there is a bright future for the forensic, the meaning of that in that particular country, the number of frauds are going to be increased. Okay. So in any economy, if number of frauds are going to be increased, then that economy will not get respect worldwide. So that is not expected. Of course, apart from that, the disputes. Not I'm talking about the fraud, not disputes. So financial dispute, business related dispute, contractual disputes, that could be there at any moment. So disputes are different from the fraud, right? So from the dispute point of view, there is a larger opportunity because more and more, at least in India, you can see that the development with the space of this development, economical development, the number of entities are growing, the different types of the businesses are growing, technological part is also growing, different ideas in the execution of various types of the contracts is also growing. So in a way, the financial disputes will also differ from one to one, right? So from financial, even the family dispute, those are also increasing. Even if you see the divorce cases, unfortunately, those are increasing, right? So in the divorce cases also, you will require the certain forensic skill set to identify the income or sources or the assets kind of thing. So if that kind of disputes are there, obviously this forensic will get an opportunity. But of course, from the fraud point of view, yes, there is an opportunity because the number of frauds still growing. But I may say that if I will make a statement that it should have a bright future, then I'm expecting that the number of frauds to be grown. I'm not expecting that. But other in the area of a financial dispute, of course, there is an opportunity because that is naturally going to happen when entity to entity businesses are taking place.
Definitely. So, there are some questions from our viewers who are asking what are your experiences or the practical insights that you have experienced and you would like to share it with us?
There are a number of, I can't recollect all of them. But the thing is that one thing, I started this forensic when I was not knowing the word as a forensic, to be very frank. At that time, it was either audit or investigation. I was talking about the time period around 2000. Okay, around 2000. So at that time, we were not aware about this forensic, but we were aware about the difference between what is audit and investigation. So what I did in my initial assignment, that I was very quite sure that you cannot sit in the office, you cannot just verify the documents, and you can conclude on this particular fraud related investigation. What you have to do, you have to just act like a police. Not with the police authority, but you have to go to that particular supplier's place. You have to go to visit that third party on the ground. You have to put tactically questions to them. You have to extract that information. Then you come back to the office and then you correlate with those with the transaction which have been taken place. So this seems to be very interesting, and I was very interested. So even though in those cases I experienced all that, you can say that Hindi movie masala. I mean threats and all that things. So it was, and still I'm nowadays it is more challenging because I said that it is in the digital area. So in the digital area, they are wisely performed. On the earlier days, the techniques of the products were a bit simple, I can say, but now those are complicated because of the use of this digital area. And in the digital area, it is very difficult sometimes to trace out the final person who has actually initiated or done these transactions, because it needs to be well equipped by all the digital technology there. Okay, I can reach up to the IP address from where that request has been initiated. But if there is no CCTV camera, I cannot see actually who has operated that IP addresses for that fraudulent purposes. So there are the limitations on this. So this is a mix of, you can say, the experiences, mentality is same of the fraudsters. But the thing is that the method or the tools which they are using, these are different, and the challenges is real to dig out those technologies and got the evidences. That is what I still feel it is very challenging for me.
That is taking out the information from available from all the data.
Exactly. All the data and the technical processes, digital processes.
Yes, in those days, it was definitely very difficult because technology was not there to help it out. You have to do the sorting and filter and everything by the manual efforts.
Hmm. Right, you are rightly said so.
Definitely, sir. I think my viewers have got some more questions that they are asking for the problems that the form we apply while seeing the instances.
Sorry, I'm not getting that.
1 minute, sir. One of the viewers is asking for the problems being faced by the forensic accounting and investigators.
Most of the time you will you will face the common problem of non-cooperation, availability of the information, and the way you are expecting the evidences. Right. It's not an easy way. Who will help you? Because once you are known that you are the forensic person, you are investigating a particular case, and when the news is getting spread, and this is very easy nowadays, that because of the social media, the news is getting widely spread within a second. That you are here, you are there, and you are investigating. Even in my case, I have handled that situation, right? So the moment you start investigation, all the persons with whom you wanted to contact, they are on the alert mode. In the audit, that should not happen. So they are very cautious. Whatever the words they want to use with you, they are very calculated one in that. And with that approach, it's become challenging task to extract the information or gather the evidences. Or sometimes you will feel that the evidences are destroyed because the fraudsters are now well aware that sometimes it will be get investigated. So they will start to destroy the evidences. So these are the basic challenges which the forensic professionals are going to face. But even these things are happening, then there is a skill set, again, I can say, which the experienced forensic can develop. So what is the alternative if the evidences is destroyed? What is the other way, other types of the evidences by which still we can prove the case, even though the borrower or even though any other party is not cooperating with us? What is the other way workaround? With that, we can give some conclusion. So, one way it is challenge, another way it is exploring for your opportunities. So you can have an opportunities to think differently, to get the same thing done in a different manner. Of course, with the legitimate manner. I'm not suggesting here with the informal or illegitimate manner. I'm not suggesting.
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing all the queries of our viewers.
Thank you, Tanush. Thank you very much.
And with these words, we would like to put a vote of thanks to our viewers as well as the speakers who were present and who were the gem of this session. By sharing their valuable insights and their practical insights, they have provided the wise knowledge and the rich experience being shared by them. I, CA Tanushri Lekha, the moderator of the webinar on for overview of forensic accounting and investigation standards, being conducted by DAAB of ICAI, would like to put a thanks of words for CACS Nanda sir and his entire team, especially the technical team who has put a lot of efforts to cumulatively put the different persons on a single platform. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for spending your time with us and enriching your knowledge, sharing it with us, all of us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, sir.